in third place. Winning the playoff third and fourth place match is going to be Ben.
I did it. Hello everyone, my name is Ben, the best black player in North America. Sorry, I just have to say that at least once. As you guys could tell from the beginning of this video, recently I participated in the Digimon National Championship, held in Las Vegas. And not just that, I came in third place, which means that after all this time, I can finally say, I'm going to Worlds. And the deck that got me my invite was none other than Rocks, with a little bit of Ben spice of course. Since this deck is one that I've already shown on the channel before in a recent video, this time around, instead of going through the entire card by card, instead, we're going to be focusing on only the new cards that I added into this strategy, as well as what cards I took out in order to fit them in. If you were looking for a more detailed card by card explanation of how the deck normally functions, be sure to check out my previous video in the link down below. So, let's not keep you guys waiting and get right to the deck profile.
Oh, I didn't see you there. You might be wondering, what am I wearing today? Well, it's the sponsor of today's video.
This video is brought to you by Trinity Hobby. Trinity Hobby is the perfect place to get all your hobby essentials. From things like trading card games like Digimon and One Piece, to other hobbies such as Beyblade and anime figures and collectibles. Oh, right. Did I also tell you that it is the Gundam shop of my hometown? Meaning that it also has all the things you need for your Gundam / model making hobbies. I even got this sick Machinimon model that I can't wait to build on stream one day. Trinity Hobby just holds a special place in my heart because it is actually my main car shop that I go to from my hometown. So be sure to check them out with the links in the description below. Who knows? Maybe you might even see me in one of their locals. Alright, back to the video. Now as for the reason why I brought this deck to the tournament, during my nationals prep, my boy Anthony and I have done some serious thought as to what decks will be viable going into this national tournament. And eventually, we came into the following graphic, where the first row is what we thought were going to be the best decks to worry about, and each row lower being less priority for me to worry about, as I myself at least was not too impressed by their power. Or at least, that was my opinion as a Rocks player. Little did I know, towards the end of my nationals prep, especially with the recent Digimon events that have occurred, we have concluded that the best two decks were none other than Hoodie, which was to be expected, and Times Changer, or TS, which was definitely underexplored while testing. And both matchups can honestly be pretty hard for Rocks, especially Hoodie. So the question is now, what do I do for dealing with those matchups? Hoodie. Definitely one of the more degenerate decks in a recent time. This strategy is able to get so much free value and aggression, thanks to the BT23 Hudiemon allowing you to play out free Digimon or Tamers, while also swinging with Alliance. And if that wasn't enough, you could then use those two bodies to DNA Digivolve into the CS Ukkomon. And just to make matters worse, if you combine those cards with say something like the CS Rookies from BT22, or the brand new promo card Digilab, you are then able to use those effects to de-Digivolve yourself, and then be able to swing with the Hudiemon again. Pretty degenerate, am I right? That combo by itself is also super fast, which is definitely a huge weakness of the Rock strategy. Any strategy that is super aggressive against us before we can set up our OTK is definitely a bad matchup. But there's one important thing to note though. See, the combo's main source of aggression comes from the Hudiemon attacking our security with Alliance over and over again. Meaning if I could just stop the Hudiemon from attacking in the first place, I should be able to prolong the game enough in order to get to my OTK before they can kill me. And so, for those of you who are well aware of the black card pool, I'm sure this comes as no surprise, we are playing two copies of the BT9 Kongou. And for those of you who don't know what it does, this card has the very simple effect of, until the end of our opponent's turn, none of our opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less are allowed to attack players. And also, as an added bonus, no cards can be added to either player's security. Meaning that this card by itself should be able to stop the Hudiemon loop from attacking with Alliance multiple times. And as niche as that secondary effect is, it actually does come up a lot. It'll prevent our opponents from being able to recover stuff into our security or even send stuff from our side of the board to our security. So say for up against like a Mastamon, they were no longer able to send our Tamers or our Digimon into security. And also, if we're up against something like a BT24 Venus, they can't send any of their own Digimon into security either in order to protect themselves and potentially dodge our OTK. This card has been absolutely great in ensuring that I have my lethal turn, whether I'm using it proactively to stop the Hudiemon from looping me, or using it to make sure my opponent can't recover or do anything cheeky as I'm going for game. And unfortunately, because it is not a Liberator, nor is it a Digimon, it is a little bit difficult to get into our opening hand without just raw drawing it. And thus, we had to justify 2 copies into our deck. And so, what did I take out? Well, first and foremost, I unfortunately have to say the first card that I had to cut from my deck in order to fit it in was 1 copy of my red Gotsumon. I know, folks, all those times of me saying hashtag Gotsumon unfortunately was not enough to make the cut for the national level event. And the reason why is because its effect to prevent neither player from playing Digimon by card effects doesn't really come up. Even with the Hudiemon himself being able to play Digimons for free, if I did something like playing the Gotsumon here, he could then just bring out a Chitose and then using the Hudiemon's effect to give it minus 3000 DP, which would then kill it in resolution, and then the Chitose can then play out a free body anyways. Now, of course, I should say that this card still is very useful in some of the other niche matchups, but I believed at a national level event, those niche matchups will not apply. I need to just make sure that my game plan works, and as well as mitigate any one of my worst matchups. I can only fit so many techs into the deck. And unfortunately, Gotsumon is just the one that is meant for niche matchups, but not so much for the main matchups that I need to counter. And thus, he had to go. But that's not all. As for the next card I took out, I decided to take out of the 3 closes from EX10, I decided to take out 1 of the EX10 closes here to go down to 2 EX10 closes. Now, out of all the cards in my deck, the 7th close, that being the EX10, was the most comfortable to cut, as I do find that there are some games where I just get flooded with a bunch of Tamers in my hand. And of course, as important as the closes are, I do still need to make room for the Kongou. And of course, the EX8 close is the best close in the deck, so I can't really afford to go down to 3 copies. And so, out of all the cards that I chose to sacrifice, it would be the EX10 close here. And luckily, I found that with at least playing 6 Tamers, as well as combined with our Ukkomons and Sunarizamon search, I felt that it was just consistent enough to see a Tamer when I need it. And that's why I felt comfortable in cutting out these 2 cards. And now it is time to talk about Time Stranger, also known as TS for short. And honestly, this is a pretty hard deck to classify, as there's just so many ways to build it. Whether you're trying to play the Neptune OTK version, or the Maruki OTK version, or even just Jupiter Toolbox. However, there is one thing in particular that all these TS decks have in common. That being that all their early plays would usually typically involve Digivolving into the level 4 Agiomon, allowing them to add a security to their hand in order to play out a free Tamer. And honestly, it's this reason alone that I had a fair amount of confidence into the TS strategy. Remember from the previous video that this deck's lethal line is from 4 security, thanks to the Magneticdramon being able to trash me security and attacking twice on his own. Meaning that if the TS player does go for that line in order to get some free advantage, unfortunately they do end up putting themselves into my own lethal range, without me having to set up or do some early promotion at all. However, knowing this, there is one Digimon in particular that makes this matchup that much more harder. And that Digimon being Venusmon. You see, a lot of the TS strategies play at least 1 to 2 copies of the BT10 Venusmon, it having the effect where, when Digivolving until the end of our opponent's turn, all the opponent's Digimon get security attack -1. And as well as during the opponent's turn, while a Digimon has a security attack modifier, whether it be from her effect or from their own effect, they are not allowed to activate when Digivolving or when attacking effects. And then we have the BT24 Venusmon, which has the effect of on play or when Digivolving, they're able to strip all the sources of one of the opponent's Digimon, and then 2 of our opponent's Digimons or Tamers are not able to suspend or activate when Digivolving effects. A massive stun to the Rock strategy. You wouldn't believe that the amount of times where I'm able to find a lethal line, only for them to hard play the BT24 Venus, or even Digivolve or hard play the BT10 Venus in order to stop my lethal turn entirely. And let's not forget that you can also combine those cards with the brand new Homeros, allowing you to re-trigger those when Digivolvings or on-play effects at the end of the turn by suspending her. Super annoying. I was sick and tired of losing a Venusmon, and thus I had to come up with a solution. First and foremost, BT10. I needed something that doesn't have a when Digivolving or a when attacking effect in order to try to remove that Venusmon. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is that you could probably use something like an on-play effect. Like the Proganomon, for instance. You could definitely hard play the Proganomon in order to trash one of your sources, and then potentially use some sources like a de-digivolve inheritable in order to try to de-digivolve that Venusmon. But as you can see, it doesn't put me any closer to lethal, and more importantly, it's not really memory efficient in order to out the board. Because in the TS matchup, it's very important that you control the board as much as possible. So after a whole bunch of thinking, I've come up with this perfect solution. The first card, particularly dealing with that BT10 Venusmon, is none other than the BT4 Gogmamon. Now, what does this card do? Well, this card has the very simple effect of main Digiburst 1. I am able to choose one of my Digimon and give it 2000 DP until the end of the opponent's turn. That 2k buff literally means nothing. Sometimes it comes up in order to go for more aggression, or if you want to swing over opponents' bodies, but we really want to use that effect of being able to trash our own source in order to trigger all of our inheritables. Because as you can tell, he himself is a rock, which means that if you're able to use the Digiburst effect in order to trash sources, we are then able to use our inheritable effects to actually deal with that Venusmon. And it absolutely came up in tournament too. A lot of times when my opponent would Digivolve into the BT10 Venusmon, I'm then able to Digivolve into the Gogmamon and then use this effect immediately of Digiburst 1 because it is not a when Digivolving or when attacking effect in order to de-Digivolve that Venusmon. And now I'm able to use all my when Digivolvings again, and sure, I might still have the security attack minus applied to my entire board, but at least I can actually use my when Digivolving effects to deal with my opponent's board at the same time, potentially stealing tempo back into our favor. But I felt that that just wasn't enough. I needed something to deal with the BT24 Venus now, because of course you could Digivolve into it, but you're also able to reasonably hard play it for a decent cost. And of course, I'm still not able to activate Wind Digivolvings for the entire stack if they did manage to proactively use it on the stack that I Digivolved into the Gogmamon in the first place. So I needed a more surefire solution. And I also felt like I was missing a wild card of sorts for dealing with it. And so, after weeks of grinding, I'm playing against my friend's Hudiemon, I noticed that he himself was playing a card that I always thought was kind of useful. And then I thought to myself, why don't I use it for myself? And for those of you who have seen the live stream, you guys know exactly what is coming up next. It is time to show off the BT23 Justimon Blitz Arm. Now, as you know, this card is not a rock, but this card is absolutely crazy. Let's go over what he does. First and foremost, he's a black level 6 that has 3 cost to evo, very non-intrusive, and himself is a blocker, which does come up sometimes, but we're going to be mainly using it for the 2 effects here. It having the effect of on play, when Digivolving, or when attacking, by trashing one option card in the battle area. Doesn't have to be the opponent's, it could be our own as well. We can then delete one of our opponent's Digimon of the lowest play cost. Very solid removal. And of course, there's a lot of strong delay options, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought that that was the main reason as to why I was playing this card. But no, that is not the real reason. The real reason why we were playing this card is for that second effect. It having the effect of all turns, whenever an option card in the battle area is trashed for whatever reason, we are then able to unsuspend this Digimon, and it is unaffected by all of our opponent's Digimon effects until the end of the turn. Now keep in mind, this is a lingering effect that applies to the entire stack. So let's say, for example, we were up against the Venusmon, and then we were able to use the Gogmamon effect to Digivolve that Venusmon. Sure, we are able to then out the board, but we still can't go for lethal, which is super frustrating as an OTK strategy. Then, we can then Digivolve into the Justimon Blitz Arm, using its effect to trash our own option or the opponent's option. If we say like trash a Scramble or a in-between theater on the opponent's side, we then become unaffected by all of our opponent's Digimon effects until the end of the turn. Which does mean that lingering effect of getting all the opponent's Digimon security attack -1 no longer applies to the stack. And you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? That means we are free to go in on top into our Magneticdramon and go straight for lethal. This card was so sick, and I'm so glad that I was able to show it on stream as well. And of course, before you guys say anything, I do know for a fact that if I Digivolve this on top of our Digimon that is stunned by the BT24 Venus, sure, I'm not able to use the when Digivolving effect. However, typically when they are doing that play, they're going to be giving a fair amount of memory, which means I could use my effects like the training, for example, or pop like a memory boost, or even pop a Scramble at the start of turn while he's already on the field, and then bam! I'm immediately unaffected by all Digimon effects. And that means that stun meant absolutely nothing, and then I can go into Magneticdramon and go straight for lethal. And if I'm being completely honest, this card was actually more of a meme, as I thought it would be kind of funny to just see how many people I get my opponents to go, what does that card do? Little did I know, this card was an absolute bully to TS strategies. I love this card. And just when you thought that this card couldn't get any more weirdly good, that Unsuspend really does come up. Because let's say you're able to set up a stack with, like, say, the EX10 Proganomon, giving it 3000 power and collision piercing to the end of the turn. If we Digivolve into the Blitz arm here, we are then able to apply that collision piercing and 3k power to the stack, swing for the 14k collision piercing, and then trash an option in order to unsuspend. And remember when I told you that Magnetic's kill range is from 4 security? Well, if we know that we are safe to swing into security and then use the Blitz arm to unsuspend, we essentially got a free chip in. And that means if we Digivolve into the Magneticdramon and manage to keep turn while also having enough sources, we get to go for lethal from 5 security. God, I love Justimon. It's so cool that I get to finally add a Kamen Rider into my deck. And now, let's go over what we cut. I think it's pretty straightforward for the Gogmamon here, and from my existing level 5s, I decided to get rid of one of the EX8 Proganomon in order to add the BT4 Gogmamon here. And of course, it's important to keep in mind that the Gogmamon is not a Progano, which means you have to be careful as you cannot Digivolve the Magneticdramon on top of him. However, he's still a solid bridge, and of course, he kind of acts like a 5th EX10 Proganomon, allowing me to forcibly trigger my sources and before I go all the way up into my Pyramidi or my Magnetic. And oftentimes, whenever I did Digivolve into the EX8 Proganomon, he's always felt very okay at best. So I didn't feel like I was missing much by getting rid of one of them. And it honestly didn't mess up my curve. You were definitely not taking out one of the EX10 Proganos for sure, as it is definitely the best level 5 in the entire strategy. But now, what did we cut for the Justimon? Well, as you guys know from my previous strategy, we were playing 2 copies of the EX10 Pyramidimon and 2 copies of the Blastmon. Now, of course, I do love both cards here, as the EX10 Pyramidimon is the perfect bridge to go into the Magneticdramon, as it's able to trash sources and then regain them. But the Blastmon was also pretty useful in being able to steal tempo from our opponent. But unfortunately, as the sets have gone by, the Blastmon has become less and less impactful, especially when it's proven to become a lot more harder to do the turn steal aspect with the Blastmon himself. So I decided to just cut out one of the Blastmon here in order to put in the Justimon Blitz arm. I still wanted to keep one copy of the Blastmon because after through a little bit of more testing, it is pretty useful to be able to control breeding area. Just the idea of being able to force swing one of our opponent's Digimon and then using the alternate effects to trash our sources to say killing a cost 4 or less from whatever they promoted out. Very strong for the strategy. And something that's even more important for dealing with the TS strategy is that it is a 5 cost to Evo. The key thing for dealing with the TS strategy at the start of their turn is to try to give them 5 or more memory, as it does turn off a lot of their effects. And Blastmon is super easy to make sure that we are able to pay 5 memory. But of course, that still doesn't really play around the Venusmons that much, and that's why we are still playing the Justimon Blitz arm. Very toolboxy for our level 6s, but honestly I wouldn't have it any other way. As we all know, the key boss monster for ending the game is always just Magneticdramon. And now let's go for some overall generic improvements of the deck. First and foremost, I'm sure you guys have all expected this by now, we are playing one copy of the brand new promo Icemon. Now, for those of you who don't know what this card does, this card has the nifty effect of on play, when Digivolving, and when moving, by placing one level 4 below Ice, Snow, or Rock from our hand or trash underneath it as a source. We are then able to give one of our rocks unaffected by the Digivolve, as well as unable to be returned to hand or bottom deck. Incredible protection. Basically, what this card entirely covers is that the only way to remove our rock stacks is by deletion, whether it be by DP minus or by regular battle or effects. But as you know, the rock strategy has access to fragment, which means we are able to burst our sources in order to try to keep ourselves alive, which is exactly what we want. And if that wasn't enough, it has the inheritable effect of blocker, which I definitely felt like the deck was lacking a lot more defensive tools. And if that wasn't enough, it is also 6k DP. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Never again will we be up against a purple or yellow strategy, and then they will just simply Digivolve into a Ruin mode, potentially skipping our turn twice. This card being 6k DP is such a beautiful anti-Ruin mode card. Now, you guys might be wondering, why am I only playing one copy? Well, you see, as awesome as this card truly is, when I tried to fit 2 copies myself, I found out that it was actually a little intrusive to what the deck already wants to do. Take our existing level 4s. We are still playing 4 copies of the promo Landramon, it having the effect of when Digivolving and start a main phase, being able to check the top 3 cards of our deck, as well as having the inheritable effect of being able to Digivolve 1, being way too strong to pass up. So of course that is a no-brainer being able to keep at 4 copies. And as for the other level 4 we play, we still have to play at minimum 3 copies of the EX8 Landramon. Now, you can make an argument to try to put 2 copies of the Icemon himself. However, I noticed for my playstyle, I noticed that if I don't have at least 3 copies of the EX8 Landramon, I noticed that my curve of being able to get out free Tamers really does slow down. And I'll also be putting myself into a lot more awkward situations, like say if I'm up against like Galaxy using the Cressamon to prevent my closes from suspending. Or if for whatever reason I have like an Emblem on the board and no closes on the field at all. Without having the EX8 Landramon in time in order to get a free close, it ruins a lot of my ramp. And thus, I felt like I still need to keep 3 copies of the Landramon in order to play around those niche scenarios, and it doesn't take away from what makes the deck super strong in the first place. Turboing out those closes and having a lot of consistent search. The protection is always nice, but we only need to see it on the kill turn. And we have plenty of ways to search in this deck, as you guys already know. If you wanted to try and fit a second copy, feel free. But I wouldn't cut any of these ratios right here. You'd have to cut into something else. And as for the general improvements, you already know that we are still playing 3 copies of the Ukkomon in order to get some consistent search value, and we are also still playing 4 copies of the EX8 Sunarizamon. These cards are very important for our generic search, and also the Ukkomon itself is too important to get 2 Tumblemons in rotation very early. And of course, we are still playing 3 copies of the BT21 Sunarizamon. It is just too important for the reduction effect of digivolving into our rocks for cheaper cost. And 4 copies never really felt good, as there are some times where we are evolving in the back. It's only good when we're planning to evolve for the kill turn. And yes, before anyone says anything, I did manage to get the gold copy of the BT21 Sunariza from EX11. I do still need 1 to 2 more copies, so if you guys know anyone, please hit me up. And so with that, we have at least 10 rookies that were non-negotiable. But let's go over the other rookies. We were in fact playing 2 copies of the EX10 Sunarizamon, as well as playing 2 copies of the EX8 Gotsumon. Editor's note, small mistake here. It was 3 copies of the EX8 Gotsumon, mainly because I wanted to have as much blocker as possible in my previous list. The Gotsumon was still quite useful in being able to have blind draw, as well as being an anti-ruin mode card. And of course, the EX10 Sunarizamon was always useful, being able to suck 2 sources in underneath any one of our stacks in case we were missing lethal. But as you know, even when I'm playing 14 rookies, I could still brick. And in all honesty, I found that with playing 14 rookies, as cool as it is to constantly keep the Ukko engine going, it did kind of lock my deck into one style of play. I really wanted to have the option of playing passively, while still keeping our explosive turns. And so I decided to cut 1 copy of the Gotsumon here for another defense training, as well as 1 copy of the EX10 Sunariza for another copy of the Black Memory Boost. Now, trainings, you've already seen my justification for. It is just a better choking tool if we're planning to digivolve into Ukkomon, even though the Black Memory Boost, I will still say, is a lot less intrusive for the rock strategy, especially if we're playing 4 emblems, which we are. But the thing is, the Black Memory Boost is a little bit more awkward to play, and of course, the defense training is a lot easier to choke with. And of course, the defense training is a lot better for my playstyle, as I tend to choke a lot easier when playing 2 memory. But still though, with playing 2 more options into my strategy, especially ones with delays, I find it a lot more easier to have a lot more explosive plays while still keeping valid search up. Very good if you want to have a more passive turn, or if we just don't have an emblem in hand. It's just very good searching. And of course, if we are playing the Kongou for that matter, it makes all the more sense that we should be playing more defense trainings than the Black Memory Boost in the first place. Now, you might be wondering, why bother even playing Black Memory Boost in the first place if that is the case? Well, you see, Black Memory Boost kind of doubles as not only just a card that is not intrusive with our emblems, it also is a non-intrusive card for triggering our Justimon Blitz arm. At any point, we could just use the Black Memory Boost in order to give ourselves 2 memory, and now the Justimon Blitz arm is unaffected by Digimon effects, and then we can go for lethal. We can still do the same thing with the training too, except that we would have to use the effect of the training to digivolve and just choose not to digivolve into anything, which does feel kind of bad. As such, with the 4 copies of the unique Emblem Gravel Hearts, provided with the 2 copies of the Defense Training, as well as the 1 copy of the Black Memory Boost, and of course the 2 copies of the Black Scramble, and of course let's not forget that we are playing 4 copies of the EX8 Close, and 2 copies of the EX10 Close. We are now sitting at 15 cards that is potential absolute gas in our security. I've noticed in this format in particular, there's a lot of chip damage, or at least a lot of multiple check damage while going for security and not necessarily going for game. And with 15 cards that is potential absolute gas that could change the course of the game or straight up win the game entirely, I I was feeling quite good. And of course, that is also not including 2 more copies of the Kongou, which can randomly just stop our opponent from going for lethal. 17 cards, that is at the very least decent in the check into security. And of course, the 15 cards that if you check in security, you could just randomly lose the game. I very much enjoy this spread here. It just seems like absolute gas. Believe me when I tell you, it's going to be incredibly hard to try to fit all the new cards from EX11. But at least for this particular format, I wouldn't change this at all. And that pretty much runs off all the non-intrusive edits to make my deck still functional. And if you couldn't tell, I'm still playing only 3 copies of the Magneticdramon, only because I am pretty good at drawing him. If you are trying to play 4 copies, feel free. But because I was playing 3 copies, you could say I was even more comfortable with this amount of changes that I made. And of course, my deck still was fully functional. And that was the deck that got me my invite to the World Championship. In all honesty, I'm still having trouble believing it. Year after year of attempts at the national tournament, I'm sure long-time running fans would know by now that it's always been my dream to play on the world stage. And at some points, I've even caught myself getting too caught up on the competitive aspect of the game, before relearning what the most important thing was: to have fun. And I would be lying if I said that that mental reset wasn't a huge factor for me. It's been a long journey, and I'm truly grateful to all of you who have supported the channel thus far, and to finally see me make it here. And also don't worry, I'll be sure to give you guys a vlog that will go through my entire tournament run. But unfortunately, the sad truth is, Worlds is 3 weeks away. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to ask you guys to patiently wait until I get back before I can work on it. And yes, I will be vlogging Japan too. Thanks so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in Japan, because I'm going to Worlds. See you, everybody.